Welcome to the program. I'm David Ono. I am in front of the Los Angeles Coliseum, home to two Olympiads. The Olympics are an internationally acclaimed sporting event. Every 4 years, the world's best-known athletes compete against the lesser-known in a friendly competition to see who's best. In 1964, the 18th Olympics were held in Tokyo. It would change the way the world sees Japan. For the first time ever, the Olympics would be hosted by an Asian country. The huge success of the Tokyo Olympiad gave hope and a sense of pride for Nikkei everywhere. Behind all this success, there was one Japanese-American couple in particular whose contributions cannot go unnoticed. They are Fred and Masako Wada.
Well, I can't accept that my family be locked up somewhere.
Fred Wada always spoke his mind.
I would like to bring more good Japanese-Americans from California.
Is very unusually determined.
Go back! It's time to go. I'm afraid I can't.
She was always by her side and gave him wise counseling.
What do you think about inviting them to stay with us? How can we protect our kid?
Maybe he might be arrogant too, who knows?
We divided what we caught equally.
This is the story of Fred and his wife Masako, a story that begins with an extraordinary kibe, Fred Wada. Fred Wada was born in Bellingham, Washington in 1907. He was the first child of Zenbei and Tamae Wada. His parents were both Issei, first-generation immigrants from Wakayama Prefecture in Japan.
My grandparents moved to Vancouver, then to Seattle, and then to a little town called Bellingham. My grandfather couldn't find a job as a fisherman, so he opened up a small restaurant, but I think that failed. He went to Seattle after that and was a vegetable vendor. He went up and down streets and sold vegetables from his truck. I don't think he made a lot of money.
Fred's family was very poor, so Fred was sent to Wakayama to live with his grandparents.
이사무, お家に帰るよ.
Kibe were Nisei, born in the United States, but they went to Japan to be educated, and then they returned to the United States. They were neither Japanese, their Japanese wasn't quite as good as a Japanese-born Japanese, and they weren't American, fully American either.
My father grew up on eating with rice that was cooked in tea water, once in a while fish.
When he was 6, Fred received a letter from his father telling him that his mother had died while giving birth. He had missed his mother terribly, and sadness filled his heart. The villagers had grown close to Fred and showed him kindness. They taught him the traditional ways to fish and other important lessons.
We would distribute accordingly amongst the entire village. The profit of the day would also be distributed equally amongst everyone. That's how we live daily.
Even in difficult situations, people helped each other. The beautiful memory of the villagers stayed in his heart forever. When he was 11, Fred was called back to the United States.
My grandfather was very lonely when my grandmother died, and he started to drink heavily.
After some time, Fred's father had remarried, For Fred, the new family environment was far from positive. Fred's new stepmother showed him no affection, favoring her own 3 biological children over him. Eventually, the family moved from Seattle to San Pedro, where there was a Japanese fishermen's community called Terminal Island.
There were about 3,000 families on the island. We were just like brothers and sisters because we lived together so closely. My father, having all the little kids jump on the truck and deliver the milk to the houses.
He used to give one extra chocolate and milk. He was a generous type of person, you know.
When there were people who couldn't afford milk, he would take money out of his own pocket and leave them a few bottles.
My father's 4 step-brothers and sisters, lived in Terminal Island as well, in small quarters, and I think it was really a difficult life.
Having not felt part of his father's new family, Fred left Terminal Island for Oakland when he was 21. With his minimum savings, he managed to open a small fruit stand. When he was 26, Fred was able to expand and opened multiple stores. He also met his future wife and strongest supporter, Masako, who had lived in the same area of Japan where Fred grew up.
Eiko, my father's younger sister, decided that my father was 26 and time for him to get attached, so they drove him down to Monterey where they knew friends and they were introduced.
It was my first time meeting him, and I couldn't look him in the eyes. I was still 17 or 18.
My father always had a way of tipping his hat back, and she seems to remember that, and that must have been kind of appealing to her.
Masako was an inexperienced woman, only 19 years old, who was totally unprepared for the huge changes Fred Wada represented.
My father was a very hardworking person. He would work from 3 or 4 in the morning, and then he'd come home in the afternoon, take a nap, and then he'd go back to work. He was they called him a street survivor.
How should I put it? He didn't have much formal education, but he was very street smart.
They looked towards him as a leader.
He is very so-called aggressive in trying to lead people.
Japanese in Oakland who had a lot of mom and pop's produce stores, but they were individually working. So he gathered these produce people and formed what they called an East Bay Food Dealers Association.
Fred, they would all stick together. Money got to be a problem. They would loan each other money without anything, no signature.
To him, it was a matter of teamwork. He was a man of teamwork.
Yesterday, December 7, 1941, the United States of America suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Their lives were about to endure an unfortunate change.
They went to see a movie in Japantown. That was the day when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. Americans all lined up and they were booing and shouting and throwing things at all the Japanese. Thought it was one of the most frightening experiences my mother ever encountered.
This trigger event affected all people of Japanese ancestry in America.
I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost.
Executive Order 9066 that was signed by President Roosevelt, the military had the authority to designate certain military zones or areas. That military areas 1 was where Japanese American population lived. So all along the West Coast, They were excluded. They had restrictions of travel, curfew, then they were put into detention centers, also euphemistically called assembly centers. Most of them were American-born.
Were ordered to evacuate within 48 hours.
So there was about 7,000 people. They cut it in half. Half was cut in Missouri, Montana, and they went to the concentration camp. And the other half went to Bismarck, North Dakota.
There were many trucks coming into the island where people would buy our furniture or whatever possession we had at a very minimal price.
We had no way of complaining about what was going to happen. The government was in a position to do whatever they wanted to do, and we had to comply.
You're Asian, you're threatening. You could come and invade the country.
As thousands of other Japanese Americans prepared to live in relocation camps, Fred and Masako were unsure what to do.
Papa, my parents and relatives will be going to the relocation camp.
Will they?
What should we do?
Masako, I told you I can't accept that my family be locked up somewhere.
But then, where can we go? We also have our daughter to think about.
Everything, I think, was in turmoil by then. My father's feeling was, well, if California doesn't want us, we're going to go elsewhere, and no one is going to put me in any concentration camp.
Japanese Americans were allowed to voluntarily evacuate and settle in other parts of the country.
Fred went to talk with his friend, Galen M. Fisher, a humanitarian. The idea of voluntarily moving away from the West Coast emerged.
Fred, how are you planning to maintain your community?
I would like to do it like I did in childhood. We used to go beach scene fishing, and even the children and elders would help out. The great thing is, we divided what we caught equally. I believe we should apply this method here.
So you plan to evenly distribute the profits amongst yourselves?
Exactly.
I think that's a great idea. The problem is, the conditions for growing vegetables in Utah are much more harsh than they are in California. Will you be able to manage that?
I will. The best way to overcome a shortage of food during this war is through growing vegetables.
He had a business mind, and he knew that if he went to Utah and started farming there, that they could do some good.
I was born in Utah, so I knew some people there.
The place was Keathley in Wasatch County, Utah, 40 miles east of Salt Lake City.
My father had no idea what this valley looked like, but Keathley Valley sounded, I think, very charming to him.
The challenges were immense. Fred first needed to convince 350 local people in the neighboring town that Japanese Americans were not a threat.
I would like to thank you all for this opportunity to speak today. My greatest desire in our nation's crisis is to help win the war by raising more food. For this purpose, I would like to bring more good Japanese Americans from California to settle and farm in your state.
What about the sabotage by the Japanese spy at Pearl Harbor?
We are completely 100% loyal to the United States, and if any member of my group does something unpatriotic, I will volunteer myself to be shot dead first.
Sad to say, at that time, yet there was a lot of skepticism among the Utah pertaining to the Japanese people, because there were very few Japanese out there, and well, as you could say, they may not trusted us.
There was about 100 people that went to Keatley.
I would say that they were an unusual group and probably one of the largest groups to leave and settle outside of the designated area.
Our group was mostly relatives of Fred and their close friends.
Some from Oakland, I from Monterey, all different kind of people went one place, yeah.
One day before the deadline for voluntary relocation, the group drove by car for 2 days and 2 nights over the mountains. They finally arrived at Keatley after an exhausting trip, but the families were surprised by what they saw when they arrived.
Are you sure we could live our life here?
She started to cry, and my father remembers that moment, and he called that hill Weeping Hill. And so everybody would call that.
Those houses were in a bad condition, remember?
3 families live in one house. 3 families, 1 bathroom.
Went into the valley, they fixed up the cabins, made it livable.
Soon after their arrival, they had another unpleasant surprise.
One morning, I heard a boom.
Martha!
What was that, Papa?
Basically, it was a threat to us Japanese migrants. If he caused any trouble, we would get more dynamite.
People thinking, well, what are these Japs doing? Are they going to be dangerous?
They figure the more Japanese come to Utah, the more trouble they're going to be.
Fred received notice from the Utah governor. You should go somewhere else for your own safety.
Will you accept my request?
No, I can't.
Would you move to the Japanese relocation camp temporarily? I know it's a relocation camp, but I've heard it's safe.
A relocation camp? No. Definitely no.
But what are you going to do if these threats continue to happen? I have a responsibility here too, as the governor.
I understand your responsibility, but we risked our lives to come here. If other people can see how hard we work and how we live humbly, I believe they will understand who we are.
And I think for the first time, my father started to have doubts of whether he had done the right thing or not, realizing that he was endangering people.
I think it was the toughest moment for him.
When the snow finally melted, the situation in Keatley still did not seem promising.
I think he saw that valley as a beautiful garden. But when the snow melted, it was all sagebrush and boulders and rocks.
We can't raise anything here. I thought it was fertile soil underneath the winter snow.
Maybe we should go to a relocation camp instead. This place is not safe enough.
No. We talked about this before. I won't go to a relocation camp. We will handle this. It's our only way.
Do you really think so? Have you really thought about our kids?
Masa.
There is nothing here. How can we protect our kids?
Masa, if we go to a relocation camp, we'll never know if we can stay together. As long as we're here, we can stay together. If we're together, we can handle this. But I need your help.
The enormous challenge the farmers faced was turning an area that had never been farmed before into arable land.
They sort of had a negative impact on us because they said to us, how come you didn't go to camp? And I said, well, because we were under floodwater. That's what I just said there, we were under floodwater.
Many families from Keatley Farms were leaving. Only a few families chose to stay.
They worked hard in clearing that land, but they had a little stream there, and they even built a little dam to control the waterways for the vegetation.
The people from San Jose, they had a farmer before, so they know what to do, so they show me how to do it.
It was touch and go because you don't know what kind of soil it was. But they chose the right vegetable, huh?
Yeah.
But it took time for the vegetable to start growing.
Everyone who was part of the Keatley Farms project worked day and night every day.
We're so anxious to help our parents that I don't think we thought about ourselves that much.
Anything that happened at the school, break-in or robbery, they looked at us and said, oh, you Japs did it, you Japs did it. I said, we didn't do anything. So my father always said, don't say a word right, gamash in the side.
Eventually, Fred's determination proved to be fruitful.
Finally.
Yes.
My father saw that as a beautiful valley, and they did.
It's very difficult to imagine that they could turn that into farmland.
Slowly but surely, we cultivated the land. We grew green onions, celery, carrots, and peas.
Mr. Waters took it to Salt Lake City to market.
They were selling the vegetables to the fort.
Then, a young colony member decided to put up a sign that read, "Food for Freedom," along the highway.
George Takigawa wrote that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
It was a good sign to have, for the colony, because it showed that you work not only for yourselves, but for the community.
People know we came from California and we were going to raise vegetables to help the U.S.
So the local people, they were kind of shocked because they said, oh, these people are hardworking people. And then they mind their own business and do their own thing. If it wasn't for Fred Water, I don't think people would know who we were.
And we made the best of it. And I think we all did pretty well.
Yeah, we're free, huh? You know?
fellow Americans, the thoughts and hopes of all America, indeed of all the civilized world, are centered tonight on the battleship Missouri.
Hey, Marcia, come here.
On that small piece of American soil, anchored in Tokyo
What's
Harbor,
going on, Papa?
the Japanese have just officially laid down their arms. They have signed terms of unconditional surrender.
I don't know if I should be happy or sad.
We heard that Japan had lost the war, and everyone had a somber look on their faces. But what could Japan have done if it had won? A small country like Japan couldn't possibly exercise control over the U.S.
America's major port of embarkation to the war in the Pacific, the Japanese surrender brought jubilation unrestrained.
Going back to get a foothold in this society was very slow, very painful, but I think really through hard work, perseverance, put bad times behind you and make the best of a bad situation and get ahead and make something of yourself.
After the war, Fred and Masako moved back to Los Angeles and began their produce business again.
It was just right after the war, and some shopkeepers still called us Japs when they saw us walking on the street.
Meanwhile, Japan was still suffering from the war.
Coming to Japan and landing in Yokohama, and you see this rush of the kids, homeless kids, going for the garbage can. I mean, the result of having lost their family and all their ties. It affected me not only from the standpoint of a human being, seeing such suffering because of the war, not having homes. I think I never forgot it. Never forget it all my life.
Faced with the challenge of rebuilding their country, the Japanese people were looking for leaders to revive their spirit. Swimmer Hironoshin Furuhashi became one of those heroes.
Papa! This newspaper says swimmers are coming from Japan.
Yes, I heard about it from the Japanese American community. Hopefully they will support them.
What do you think about inviting them to stay with us? I can cook for them and they can sleep in the guest room. What do you think?
I think it's a great idea, Marcia.
My father purchased the home on Van Ness Street because by then was very successful with his produce business, so we were very fortunate.
In 1949, the Japanese Sports Federation sent Furuhashi and several Japanese swimmers to compete in the United States Swimming Championship in Los Angeles.
They were wonderful young men who were enthusiastic and wonderful personalities, and I think they had wonderful memories also of that house on Van Ness Street.
We, especially Furuhashi, who took the lead, felt it was our duty to act as representatives of post-war Japan.
Fred brought home vegetables and fruits from his market. Masako cooked them for the swimmers daily.
When we brought out rice for dinner, they kept saying, "We can eat white rice. It's white rice." At the time, white rice wasn't available in Japan. We hadn't realized how desperate the situation was.
We were happy. We could eat what we liked, and we had such hospitable hosts. And the children gave us peace of mind. The warmth made us feel like we were back home.
on August 16, 1949.
Highlights of the National AAU Swim Meet in Los Angeles and brilliant performances by the visiting Japanese swim stars. News of their astounding prowess has preceded them, but few Americans really believed such feats possible until the 1,500-meter race was run. All eyes are on 21-year-old Hironoshin Furuhashi, the Tokyo Flash. Furuhashi knocked 39 seconds off the old world mark.
Furuhashi set 3 world records, and the Japanese team excelled. Many Americans were surprised by the Japanese swimmer's success. Because of his world record performance, Furuhashi earned the nickname from the U.S. media as the Flying Fish of Fujiyama. Japan's surprising success became news worldwide.
And I think a big hope to Japan.
Everyone was shouting, "We won! We won!" There were many Japanese spectators, and all of them stood up in excitement.
For their part, Fred and Masako had high hopes that the Japanese swimmers would do well. Many Japanese Americans shared that hope, partly because there was still prejudice against all things Japanese.
It made me so angry to be called a Jap. After you guys came and won, we were called Japanese. Thank you.
And 10 years later, March 16th, 1959. Fred and Masako received a letter from the Japanese Prime Minister, Nobusuke Kishi, and the General Secretary of Japan's Olympic Committee, Masashi Tabata, stating,
"We would like to host the next Olympic Games in Japan. The International Olympic Committee does not believe that we can because they assume that Japan has not recovered sufficiently from the war."
Some votes to get the Olympics in Japan, and so they asked my father to go to South America.
$1 was 360 yen, and so many restrictions for the Japanese people to do some activities in foreign countries. For the Japanese government, there is no other way but just ask Mr. and Mrs. for the goodwill and their passion to support Japan.
Marcia, will you come to Central and South America with me?
Are you serious, Papa?
I am.
How about our grocery store?
I'll talk to the manager. He will handle it.
Okay. That's gonna be a long trip, isn't it?
Marcia, we could manage this with our savings. We made it through the war together, didn't we? We had a tough time, just like the Japanese people. But if they could get the Olympics in Japan, they will get back their courage. I believe it's our mission.
If you've already made up your mind, I won't argue.
Japan Amateur Sports Association knew that Detroit was the biggest competitor against them, and indeed it would go on to take on the most votes against Tokyo. Their ability to sort of focus with WADA in Central and South America, that was key.
It was only 2 months before the next International Olympic Committee session would be held.
They went to 11 different South American countries representing the Japanese Olympic Committee.
Thanks to Masako's diary, their trip schedule was documented.
March 30th, we arrived at Mexico City at 11 p.m. last night. Today, we visited General Clark at 11 a.m.
I think being known as an honorable person. So he loved Mexico, he loved his country, and was key to promoting Olympism and really truly amateurism within his country.
General Clark, if we could hold the Olympics in Japan, people will get back their pride and hope. and Japan will come back to the world.
You're right. There is no borders in sports. I can't decide though. Should we keep depending on America, or should we also get back our pride?
It is so important to have pride in your country. It may beat you down, but if we lose hope, we lose everything.
Senor Wada, as you saw, my country is still poor. My mission is to bring back hope and pride back to my country. I will help you then. But I'm going to need you to do me a favor.
What is that?
In 1968, after Tokyo, we want to bring the Olympics back to Mexico with your support on the bid for the Olympics.
Of course, we will help you for sure.
Gracias, Senor Wada, gracias. I will tell my president about you.
Later, General Clark Flores became the vice president of the International Olympic Committee, turning him into one of the most influential leaders in sports throughout the world. Having secured Mexico's support, Fred and Masako traveled to Havana, Venezuela, and Brazil. It was quite a full schedule. As soon as Fred and Masako arrived in Sao Paulo, they received a call from the International Olympic Committee.
Fred received a call from the IOC saying they wanted to vote for Japan, but didn't have enough money to make the trip to Munich.
Time was running out, and Fred knew that even 2 votes could decide everything, so he went to find the money.
There was a large, Nichibe, Japanese community who lived abroad there, who had immigrated right after the Meiji Restoration. And so they went and promoted the necessity of having, in order for the Olympic Games to be truly international.
I'm so sorry to let you go alone.
I'm all right.
Today's meeting is important.
Yes. 2 votes from them may totally change our destiny. I don't have any relationship with them. But this is our only chance.
If you talk from your heart, they might help us.
Leave it to me. I'm here to ask for your donation to conduct the Olympics in Japan. During the war, the Japanese had a really tough time, and now they've lost their hope. I believe if they could hold an Olympic event, they will get back their pride and hope again. We need money to help the Brazilian IOC committee to attend the conference in Munich.
How much do you need?
2,000.
2,000?
I know it's all of a sudden ridiculous. And it's a lot. But what I mean is...
We cannot afford to do that, unlike you Japanese Americans.
Please listen. I want to give back pride and hope to our country.
Our country? What have they done for us? We believed their policies and came here wide-eyed with our dreams. But look at us. We were treated like slaves. We couldn't even afford to go back to Japan. When the war began, we were completely abandoned by them. We will no way support our betrayers.
Go back! Go back. You're not welcome!
Go back. It's time to go.
I'm afraid I can't. I was also betrayed by our country. We lost everything. Money, property, our land. And we had to go to relocation camps just because we were Japanese.
Yes, we already know that.
I refused to go there, and I moved to a desert named Kitli. There was nothing there but our barracks. We had to create our own farm under the constant threat of our neighbors. But I never gave up, because even if we lose everything, we can never lose our pride and hope. And I believe this is the right choice for our future. This Olympics is not just for them, but also for us and for our future.
If we collect $2,000, do you promise you will make it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Then, let's help him as a community.
There were many reasons why Japan lost the war, many theories. But debating this wouldn't get us anywhere. Fred instead focused his efforts on restoring Japan. This was undoubtedly rooted in his love for the country.
On May 26, 1959, the 55th International Olympic Committee session was held in Munich. Fred flew over to Munich and met with Masaji Tabata, the General Secretary of Japan's Olympic Committee. The two waited for the results.
Ballot of the International Olympic Committee.
The final vote was Brussels 5, Vienna 9, Detroit 10, and Tokyo 34.
Tokyo 34票.
It was decisive thanks to the Latin American votes.
Papa called me immediately and told me the Olympics are going to be in Japan.
At the National Stadium, there's a capacity crowd of 75,000 present for the opening ceremonies that precede 20 different sports events among athletes from 94 nations.
After the Tokyo Olympiad, Fred carried his name card with a Japanese and English poem together. Gold medals shouldn't go merely to the swiftest, highest, or strongest, as the Olympic motto holds. You should be able to win them with a smile, a helping hand, with courtesy as well as courage, kindness as well as keenness, a good heart as well as a strong one. I would give the whole country a gold medal. Thus, the Tokyo Olympic Games turned into a huge success. Afterwards, the Japanese economy recovered quickly, and Japan became a very important partner to the United States, a relationship that continues today. Eventually, Fred became involved with the 1984 Los Angeles Olympic Committee, acquiring many Japanese sponsors for the event. But for Fred and Masako, there'd be one other opportunity on par with the Olympic Games. This final contribution was the development of the Japanese retirement home, Keido. The idea for Keido was proposed by Masako.
When we visited Sao Paulo during our tour in South America, we found a retirement home for Japanese people. When we got back to Los Angeles, Papa said we should go back to Brazil. I asked him why, and he told me we would help make the retirement home bigger. I told him I didn't want to go to Brazil.
She told him, no, we have to build that in USA, where we have all our friends in the community to help the people. That's how my parents got involved with the retirement community. My father had gone to Los Angeles and gathered some businessmen like George Aratani and others.
Fred and George decided to purchase this Jewish home in Boyle Heights.
My father, I think, agreed to buy it for $1 million. So it was a huge brick building and needed a lot of work and money.
Keatley's case, it was like 100 people or so. In Cairo's case, it's affected thousands and thousands of people.
For Fred and Misako, it was a final challenge.
He took his own house, mortgaged it with the Bank of Tokyo, and used that money to buy the building. It was a big risk, not knowing how things would turn out.
When asked by Masako about their debt, Fred responded by saying if they went bankrupt, they could themselves live in the facility. That's dedication.
I did not disagree with him. It was necessary for the Japanese community at the time.
She was in the background. Mr. Wada was the person that spearheaded the fundraising portion. The Japanese community didn't have that kind of money. So my father and George Aratani went to Japan and asked for donations.
It is solid, and it is solid, and it is steady, and it's determined.
They got a lot of other people behind them. They had to put the thing together and get other people committed to doing stuff to help the older people.
I was in that group. We broke up in place people. Some people went into 1,000, some people went to 3,000, some people went to 5,000, some people went 10,000, some people went 50,000.
どうしてもこういうものを作りたいと思っておりますと。
One, two, three.
In 1989, having amassed $6.5 million by fundraising in Japan and the United States, they were finally able to build the Cairo retirement home.
I think people like him are rare. Looking back, I think I did a good job supporting him through all the hardships.
My father would flare off. My mother would say it was like hanging onto a firecracker, because my father would have these moments of anger and just swings because he was so stressed. He told my mother that he loved her, and he would put his hands together and thank her.
We are all born with arms and legs, the ability to talk and to think. To be born with these things and to do nothing with your life, that's one way to live. But I think it's a waste. I believe each life is like a tiny teardrop. That's why we really need to cherish our precious life.
were two people who lived a good life and were very caring human beings. And I think in their short life on earth, of course, my father was 93 and my mother was 100, but their lifetimes seemed to go by so fast. I think their legacy is their life.